Not knowing where you stand in a relationship can be so painful. It amplifies any insecurities that you may have, and it can become all-consuming. That whole wondering, I wonder if I was more like this. I wonder if they're going to do this. I wonder how maybe they feel about this. All of that questioning, it can just take up so much time and energy. Hi, my name is Heather. Welcome to my channel. I am a relationship and empowerment coach, and I love to work with people to talk to them about how to build powerful relationships. One of the key things that we talk about is emotional unavailability, and today we're going to be talking about that in our part 2 of this 3-part series about emotional unavailability, what it is, how it shows up, and how to deal with it. In part 1 of this video series, we talked about what emotional unavailability is. Essentially, it is putting barriers or obstacles up between yourself and emotional connection or emotional intimacy. In real life, this can look like people not trusting easily, people struggling to connect, and it can also look like people chasing people who don't want to be caught, consistently going after people who are not really great options for connected, committed, long-term relationships. Today, in part 2, we're going to look at how this shows up. Maybe we could call it the disguise that emotional unavailability wears. And just to be clear, this isn't just about dating relationships. Emotional unavailability can show up in friendships, it can show up in business relationships. I've seen it all over the place. So just because this may not be you looking at your romantic relationships doesn't mean you're off the hook. Over the years that I've been doing this work, I've identified about 5 main ways that this emotional unavailability behavior or tendency will show up in relationships. And one of the first ones is limiting emotional connection. This is kind of in the face of what it really means or feels like to be a human being. It's natural for a human being to want to be connected to another person. So when someone goes about doing things to limit or restrict access to themselves through an emotional connection, it's an indicator that there's something else going on. This could look like them keeping you at a distance, not being engaged in your life in the way that you might want them to be. They might be really generous with you, but they can't receive anything back, and that can be anything from help to compliments. Those can be subtle signs of some struggling with emotional connection. As well, avoiding uncomfortable conversations can be part of this too. So avoiding conversations around boundaries, avoiding conversations that might lead to conflict or a disagreement. Disagreement is really normal in relationships. It's a necessary part. Constructive conversations are a necessary part of having healthy, emotionally connected relationships. If someone is avoiding those sorts of things, that's an indicator that there's something else going on here. Another way this behavior can show up is with compartmentalization of someone's life. For someone who is emotionally unavailable, maintaining a strict control over their calendar and how they spend their time and how much people have access to them is really important. And sometimes hiding behind the disguise of, I'm really busy, I have a lot going on, can be a really easy and subtle way to manage the concerns they have around being emotionally connected. And this can look like someone having a solidly booked calendar, like there's not a lot of space. Compartmentalizing can also look like they keep their friend groups and you and their family and everything else separate. It could be that they always come to you, but you never go to them, or the other way around, like you always go to their house, but they never come to your house. Everything just sort of fits separately in things. And also it can seem like there's not a lot of space for you. So if you're wanting to build a relationship with them, you're wanting to be emotionally engaged in what they have going on in their life, and you want them to be emotionally engaged in what's going on in your life, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of space, that you have to kind of be fighting for time. Another way emotional unavailability can show up is through manipulative or controlling behaviors. And now this one in the world of dating especially can be a bit challenging to pin down, because at the beginning stages of getting to know someone, sometimes there's a bit of a dance that you do about learning what their boundaries are and how they respond to your requests and so on and so forth. So this one can be a little bit harder sometimes to identify in the early stages, and often by the time it becomes clear, it's a part of an emotionally unavailable pattern, you're really further into the relationship. So some key indicators would be things like withholding. If they withhold themselves, if they withhold their love, if they withhold communication, withhold spending time with you, any kind of withhold is a form of trying to control a situation. Might be coming from trying to protect themselves and protect their heart, but it still is a controlling behavior. Always being right about something. So whenever there's a conversation about anything, they might jump immediately to defending their position and trying to prove that the way that they think or feel about something is right. This indicates an inability to be able to emotionally relate with somebody and is a concern when it comes to building emotionally connected relationships. As well, avoiding responsibility for impact. Impact, intended or otherwise, is a real thing. And so when there's impact in a relationship, it's really important that the person that you're in relationship with, it has space to be able to talk to you about the impact that they had. If they hurt your feelings, if you hurt their feelings, etc. It's really important to be able to have those conversations without concern for how that's going to negatively impact the relationship. So this can also look like deflecting, avoiding, blaming. Any of those sorts of behaviors, especially if they're happening consistently, are things you want to be looking out for. Another way this can show up is with avoiding commitment to plans or people. You'll often hear people joking about, I have commitment issues. And in my opinion, when that comes up, there's often an underlying tone of truth to that, and it's something you want to look at. If someone has a challenge with committing to things in their future, that's an indicator of the amount of emotional space they have available to be dealing with the things that are happening in relationships. It's often related to a struggle to be able to articulate what a boundary is later on. So for example, if I said that yes, I wanted to do something with you, or yes, I want to be in this relationship with you, and then later on, I don't want to do the thing anymore. I may not feel like I know how to be able to tell you that I don't want to do that thing anymore. And I may not know how to do that without hurting your feelings and damaging the relationship. As well, in the committing to a relationship, if this feels really good and fun right now, but I'm not sure how it's going to feel later on. So rather than being able to navigate some of those tricky conversations that come up as you're building a relationship, I'm just going to avoid getting connected and involved in the first place. That's real. People do that. And so if that's showing up, it's a pattern and usually indicates some level of emotional unavailability. And it's something that you want to be paying attention to. Another way that this can look like in real life is always looking for the bigger and better thing. So it could be whether it's bigger and better plans, like I don't want to say yes to you because I'm waiting for something better to come along, for something to do on Friday night, or whether it's I'm also constantly looking on dating apps or looking in the world for another better partner. Those are indicators of an inability to connect at an emotional level deeply. And I think it's a really important thing to consider and be real with yourself about when you're considering whether or not someone is a good fit for you. Finally, one of the ways that I see this show up a lot is people who are really elusive in their communication. They aren't necessarily clear or straight. They may give you a bunch of different examples or explanations for things as you question them about what's happening because they haven't been clear in the first place. They might get defensive or their story might change. That also can be indicative of an unwillingness to commit emotionally. If you ask them outright for information, they may give you soft answers instead of like a really solid, clear answer that you're looking for. This is really important when it comes to building trust in a relationship. If you're constantly getting answers that are kind of wishy-washy instead of something that you can stand firm on that is also backed up with action, it's no wonder you don't feel safe in the relationship. Those are all examples that you might find or see when you're looking for identifiers of emotional unavailability in another person. But a question I have for you here is, do you notice any of those things for yourself? Often when we are attracted to or drawn to people who are emotionally unavailable, it's indicative of something happening over here with ourselves. When we are in relationships with people who are emotionally unavailable, It allows the spotlight to be over there with them, on them, about them. All you're doing is trying to figure out how to understand them better, how to communicate with them better, how to get them to like you, who you need to be, how you need to be, what you need to do in order to have them finally feel safe in the relationship, or finally decide they love you, or whatever that thing is. It has you put your attention and focus over there instead of really being responsible for what's happening over here and setting your own limits and boundaries and asking for what you need. So it's just something to pay attention to. If you're struggling with emotionally unavailable relationships, or find yourself consistently attracted to people who are demonstrating patterns of behavior like this would be a really good place for you to start looking. Another marker of emotional unavailability that I should mention before I go is that being highly independent, which is often revered as a strength or looked at as a strength in our culture, can be an indicator of emotional unavailability. It's easier for me to be independent of people and do all the things by myself, solve all the problems by myself, than it is for me to trust other people and count on other people or ask other people to contribute to me. And so that can be another indicator that maybe there's something else going on than just this isn't the right person. When you find yourself in relationships where you're fixing or saving the other person all the time, where you're attracted to people that you might be able to fix or save or help, that's also an indicator of how much you prefer to put the focus over there instead of keeping the focus over here and being responsible for what's going on for you. So if any of this has resonated with you so far, as in, yeah, I find people like that all the time, or I date people like that all the time, or I have the last 5 people I've dated, or the last person I was in a long-term relationship with was like that, it would be really valuable to do some looking over here with yourself about how you might be contributing to this pattern in your life. So now, of course, you might be asking, well, what can I do about this? I recognize that there is this pattern. I recognize there are tendencies like this in my relationships, or I even see some of these things in myself. How can I fix it? How can I change it? Well, the first thing that I would recommend is absolutely downloading the worksheet series that go with the blog series that'll be linked below in the description box. These can be really helpful in having you be able to identify what the patterns are that you experience the most, potentially where they come from, like why you have that pattern in the first place, as well as what to do about it. As well, we'll be doing a part 3 of this video series that will talk about how to manage these behaviors when they show up in your life. So those would be really great places to start. I think it would also be really important to mention to be gentle with yourself as you go through this process. It can often feel like you're doing something wrong or the other person's doing something wrong. And when you put that lens on this, it can just make the problem worse. This is a really heartbreaking and painful experience for either side to be on. People don't want to be disconnected from people on purpose. So when they're experiencing emotional disconnection or distance from someone else, it's because of something. So bringing a great deal of compassion and understanding to yourself and a situation like this would be really important. And remember that grace, compassion, and understanding are very different than tolerating shitty behavior. You can have compassion and understanding for someone and still be willing to draw boundaries for yourself about, I get that this is what's going on for you, and this is what I need for myself in my best interest. You still have every right to do that. As I mentioned in part 3 of this video series, we're going to talk about how to deal with this painful pattern in your life. So please make sure you tune in for that. Like and subscribe to make sure you get all the notifications about this. And please feel free to follow me on social, leave a comment. I love to hear from any of my watchers, any of my readers. I have a weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to as well. That'll be linked in the description box. Regardless, I'm really glad you're here. I hope you found this content valuable, and I look forward to connecting with you next time.